Do you want to check out IT Pro TV but aren't ready to commit? We're making a few episodes from our most popular courses free for you to try here on YouTube so you can see what they're all about. Enjoy this episode and head over to ITPro.TV when you're ready to see the full course.
Hello and thank you for watching IT Pro TV, helping you learn everywhere you go. I'm your host, Zach Memmis, for this episode of CompTIA A+, and this is Common Operating Systems Part 2. And once again, we'll ask Wes Bryant to tell us more. Wes, what you got in store?
Oh, man, we're going to be talking about compatibility. That's right. That's right. Very good. Yeah, so we left off, in the last episode, we kind of just basically introduced a little bit about operating systems. And we were talking about some of the common types of operating systems, the different clients that we could see, home clients, business clients, mobile operating systems, as well as the server operating systems. And, well, if you're not familiar with some of those concepts, I would definitely tell you to go back and watch those and then join us here in Part 2, because as we pick up, we're not really going to discuss too many of those things anymore, and we're going to move into what's known as compatibility considerations. So let's go ahead and dive in. Got a small little graph here, nothing really big. I want you to think about when it comes to compatibility operating systems, or compatibility in general, right? Considerations is that every operating system has its own unique DNA, all right? So let's talk at the vendor level first, and then we'll talk about a little bit more specific, all right? So for instance, Windows operating systems, let's say, versus Mac operating system, right? They are both operating systems, and this isn't a debate of what you like better or not, but keep in mind that a Windows operating system has its own DNA. That's the way it's programmed, its structure, and it isn't the same. It might have some similarities, if you will, to maybe Mac OS, but Mac OS, right, it has its own very specific DNA, its structure, if you will, on the way it's written and the way applications and programs interact with the operating system, right? An application or a program is a program, but the way they behave and how they're installed and how they interact with the operating system are very, very specific to each operating system. But then we can go and we can drill down a little bit farther. Let's go ahead and come back over to the Windows side of things here, and we'll talk about, well, look at the difference between Windows 10, Windows 8, or 8.1 as I'm saying here. I'm going to lump that together because 8.1 is really the addition that we liked out of the Windows 8 series. And then Windows 7, right? There's no guarantee that something that was written for Windows 7 is going to work on Windows 10. Now, I will tell you, Microsoft has been very good at compatibility, right? But there are some things that you have to take. You have to be aware of, right? While you go through editions, right? And what I mean, let's say versions. And let me make a distinction here, too, between a version and an edition, all right? So if I have Windows 7 is a version of an operating system. Windows 8.1 is a version of an operating system. Windows 10 is a version of an operating system. So I have to be specific on that, right? What applications run in one version of the operating system isn't necessarily going to be the case when a new operating system comes out. And I commend Microsoft in the fact that they do a great job as to allowing backwards compatibility. Some of them going, which is kind of ridiculous if you think about just support-wise, all the way back to Windows 95, right? And if you're still, if you're still using applications that are running Windows 95, it could be the fact that maybe you've got to get your return on investment, your ROI.
I was going to say Windows Vista.
Right, but some of them, and that is something that you can't just rely on, right? You got to be aware that some things are version specific. You will get to a certain point where Windows says, or Microsoft says, we're just not supporting it. We're not supporting that in this version of Windows. And if you run it, you're going to have to run it in a compatibility mode. All right, and we'll talk about compatibility mode coming up as well, too, so you'll know what that means. High-level overview right now just means that I can run an application on a newer operating system in the context of an earlier operating system so that we can still actually use it, right? It might just be a temporary workaround, but at least it gives you that functionality, especially if you're a company that's invested a lot of money in a previous software, and then you move to a new version of Windows and, well, isn't going to be supported, right? So those are considerations. Now, I want to get a little bit more, and let me go ahead and make mention of the editions, because I said versions difference, right? Within each version, you have multiple flavors based on the level of functionality that you need. So, for instance, in Windows 7, you have Home, you have, what was it? It was, you have Windows Pro. Home, you had the Professional Edition, which then you also had Enterprise and you had Ultimate, right? So, but 4 editions that I mentioned, there are other ones there, but those are largely speaking of the more popular ones, right? That's an addition of Windows 7, right? Windows 10 or Windows 7 Home is Windows 7. Windows 7 Professional is Windows 7, right? So underlying architecture is the same, but the level of features that they give you are different, like we've talked about in the first episode, right? The difference between a business client and a home client. All right, so you have to think OS specific, Apple versus Mac, or excuse me, I'm sorry, Mac versus Windows, right? You have to think version specific, all right? Is this supported in High Sierra, or is it only supported in El Capitan, or is it supported in Yosemite, right? Those are different versions of the Mac OS, right? Or is this supported in Windows 7 Home, but it's not supported in, I don't know, I'm just taking a guess here. It's supported in Professional, but not supported in Home, right? Because those functionality and features aren't needed. So you have to be very careful on that when you think of compatibility. There's a lot to think of, right, when it comes to compatibility. Let me go ahead and go back to our diagram real quick here, because I want you to think more than that. I kind of wanted to also talk about, hey, when we install applications and programs, and these kind of all fall under the same thing, right? Applications. If I'm going to install an application, right, am I going to use an executable, or am I going to use a disk image? The DMG format, by the way. Right. So executable, right? This is something that's in Windows, and let me show you what I mean by that. Somewhere in here, this is our terminal from earlier, I had, here we go. I pulled up this page because I wanted to show you guys what I meant by this, right? We haven't even got into the terms 32-bit versus 64-bit. Which we're going to get into now. But I want you to notice that if I was to download this file, all right, and let's just say, notice that there's the 32-bit x86. I'll come back to that. I won't leave you hanging on what that means. But more specifically, I want you to notice something here. Notice the EXE format versus the DMG format. Right. All right. This is this is an open source piece of software. Absolutely love this. Notepad++. Great thing to have. I'm running Mac. It's only supported on Windows, right? They don't make a DMG format, which, by the way, is the installer format in a Mac environment, all right? So since Notepad++ doesn't have any of those, the DMG formats, I can't run this on Mac. So I have to run it on Windows because Windows is executables. .exe is an executable file, right? Get that out of there. Right? Notice when I go to click on this, it says you can't open this app because it's a Microsoft Windows application and it's not supported on Mac OS. This isn't a down, like, I don't know, this isn't a bad thing about Mac OS, but remember what we talked about, the DNA of an operating system? I'm using that term DNA, but that's because I don't understand programming. That's the core makeup, the architecture of the operating systems are different. So you have to worry about that when you're thinking, and let me go ahead. Yes, we got it there. Thank you there, Mac. So think about your applications. Even getting them installed can be a task if you're not paying attention to the compatibility consideration. Right? Drivers, we've kind of already mentioned what a driver is. All right, but one of the things that I wanted to just kind of double back on is remember that they are, follow me here, operating system specific, right? So Mac versus Windows. But let's go ahead and stick with the Mac or with the Windows side just for a second. But they're also version specific. Oh, it's supported in Windows 7, but it was discontinued in Windows 8.1, or maybe the architecture's not there and it's not even supported, right? So you have edition specific that you have to keep in mind too. All right, and that's why I said versions, versions or the edition variations too. That's important to understand as well. Because as we have older hardware and newer operating systems come out, is the newer hardware or the older hardware going to be supported? Well, it's all dependent on if the drivers are available and present. Now, they might not be bundled into your operating system. All right, a lot of these this functionality and the drivers are built in through plug-and-play subsystems, but you can't always rely on that. You have to be willing to go to the manufacturer's website and find out those drivers. Just like we did here when we showed you, hey, we went to the vendor's website and guess what? They said, sorry, no food for you, no soup for you, right? Notepad++, you have to stay in a Windows environment if you want to be able to use it. If you want to use something like Notepad++, I had to go out and I had to find something that was close to it. Compatible, right? Open source text editor, and it is, if I go to download this, notice this is where my DMG file comes into play, right? So also understand compatibility is very, very important, Now, with that being said, let's go ahead and let's drop down and let's get into some specifics about Windows. All right. So when it comes to Microsoft Windows for the A+ exam, the ones that I would definitely know and I would have a knowledge of are the ones that you see in your list here. All right. And we will primarily be using Windows 10 throughout this, and where I feel like we should kind of show you around in some of the other operating systems, we'll demonstrate it from time to time. But I would know these 3 operating systems, all right? Windows 10, Windows 8/8.1. I would definitely know Windows 8.1 because it's kind of like the mature portion of the Windows 8 edition, or version, if you will, and then know Windows 7 too, all right? Now, we're going to talk about, let's dive into some specifics here, all right? Windows 10. That's the current Windows client, right? It reintroduced what was known as the Start menu, all right? And I'm going to show you what I mean by that coming up here in a second, because that was a big one for some of the people that maybe didn't like Windows 8.
No, Wes, you're saying it reintroduced the Start menu?
Reintroduces the Start menu, that's right. And I'll show you why, because in Windows 8, they actually took it out. And then Windows 8.1 came back into play, and they kind of knew that they had to change some things up here. So it reintroduces the Start menu, and it retains what's known as a tile or a hybridized tile interface, all right? And it also introduces Windows as a service, all right? Now, I'm going to show you what we mean by here coming up. Let's go ahead and talk about the operating systems for a little bit, and then we'll come back and we'll demonstrate what we mean. But I want you to keep in mind that reintroducing the Start menu, like Zach mentioned, and the hybridized tile menu, because that's what kind of distinguishes it as more of a progression of the UI, the user interface, over one of the earlier editions, all right? Now, I mentioned Windows as a service. Windows 10 introduces something known as Windows as a service, all right? And what that means is that feature updates are going to be implemented on a rolling basis, rather than like Microsoft has done in the past. They've gone to a Windows 7. You waited for a little while, and then they had some minor updates, and then they had a service pack, right? A service pack was a collection of all the hot fixes, all the patches, all the security updates rolled into this big one bundle that you would apply to your machine. And then, depending on the level of maturity of the operating system, you might go through a series of service packs. I can't remember what XP went to. I think it went to 3. I don't think it went past 3, but there were 3 massive service packs that would be added to Windows XP. Windows 10, they said, we're going to defer away from that. Rather than having these major, massive bundled service pack type updates, we're going to go ahead and we're going to release features as a service on a rolling update. So Windows as a service. It also plays on the terms that you'll learn in the other episodes that we do on the cloud virtualization side when we start talking about software as a service, infrastructure as a service. So it's kind of playing on the cloud buzzwords of today too. All right, now, this has, to kind of give you an example, right, you can see some of the naming conventions. Notice that we have the Windows 10 anniversary update 1607. I do like their naming convention on this because at 1607, it's going to tell you when it was released. July, the 7th month of the year. All right, notice that's at the end. It's a 2-part, it's a year-month designation. So, Zach, you can see right here that when we look at anniversary update, years first, month second, right? So can you take a guess as to what that breaks down to, right? 1607, without actually seeing it? If the year is first and the month is second, we're going to say what? 2016?
2019.
2016. Oh, that's okay. We got some consolation prizes at the door with him for you.
Thank you. A loaf of bread for Zachary.
That's right. So
it's a week old, but why not?
That's okay. Doubles as a hockey puck. So 1607, if you look at it, 16 is 2016, right?
Yeah.
07 is the month, so the 7th month of the year. And that's what they say. So if I look, without putting him on the spot, well, we'll put him on the spot again, all right? I thought, poor Zach over here, I'm throwing him curveballs here. So notice the Fall Creator update here. Can you tell me what you think?
September of 2017.
Very good. So that's what we want you to know, because if they ask you that on the exam, I'm not sure if they're going to ask you something like that, but it does boil down to supporting the operating system. You have to know
and
this.
I didn't know that, so this is news for me.
Yeah, I know, and that's why sometimes, I do unfortunately throw Zach some curveballs because, well, you do a lot, in fact, almost all of the A+ and Net Plus stuff with me. So
it's good to know.
It really is. And if you look at the Spring Creators update, you'll see 1803, and let me see if I can get some of this back in the screen here for you guys and gals out there. But again, following that same line of thinking, notice that 1803 here, we got 2018, March, right, third month of the year, and that's the Spring Creators Update. And I believe we have an 1809 that's already out. I didn't put it in the list, and they're going to keep updating. All right, so you can see as well, we're literally, this is the first day of 2019, right? We're January.
As we're taping this, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So understand that at the point of the taping of this episode, they were fairly current. You're going to see that we're going to blow way past these. Every 6 months, they're going to release one. Give or take, because I will tell you that the Spring Creators Update that you see up there was actually kind of delayed a little bit. So just pay attention to those, and again, kind of know what the naming convention is. Now, those features are what get rolled into the operating system, unlike waiting for a larger bundle to be collected, to be tested, tried, true, and everything, and then we roll it out as a service pack. They just say every 6 months, well, any new features that we're developing, we're going to slipstream into the operating system. And it's also to what I want you to understand too is that you can test these on a daily basis by being in something known as the Windows Insider Preview build, which just says that you want the latest and greatest. Doesn't matter if they're tested or not. If they put it in the operating system as a new feature, I want it before anybody else gets it.
Well, you could be part of a beta, maybe.
Well, that's kind of what kind of what's replaced their betas. In the earlier days, they call it beta testing. It still is beta testing. It's just not marketed that way. It really could. You could say the Windows Insider Preview we could just overlay that over the beta fish, right? That essentially is your beta testing, right? That we have today. So do keep that in mind.
Good.
For your service here. And let's see. Let's move down to Windows 8.1. All right. Now, you might remember I said that Windows 10 brought us a major changing of the UI, the user interface, and that's because Windows 8/8.1, and again I say that because 8 is now called Core, 8.1 is the mature, if you will, edition of Windows 8.1. It introduced both of these editions, or versions, if you will, introduced a major user interface change, all right? Up until Windows 7, which you'll see coming up, we had the traditional desktop, right? And with the traditional desktop, you had what's known as the Start menu. Well, when Windows 8.1 or Windows 8 came out, they said, well, there's a lot of touch screens out there, there's a lot of tablets, a lot of touch interfaces, so they drastically, major changed the user interface, and it was optimized for touch screens. This was a love-hate relationship. Some people loved to hate it. Some people loved it. Some people hated it. Me personally, I didn't like Windows 8 when it first came out, but all of the things that I didn't like about 8, they fixed in 8.1. And fast screen switching never even bothered me. I didn't even consider it. To me, it's not a bad operating system, right? It introduced what's known as the Start screen. Not the Start menu. This is a tiled interface, right? And that is not table mode. I don't know what table mode is. Maybe it sets the table. How about tablet mode?
I thought it was referring to ping pong.
That's right. Put salt and pepper on the table. No, this is tablet mode. And again, that's more of that renaming or the changing, the major change of the user interface where they went touchscreen optimized and went to tablets, right? They also introduced what I really liked is these administrative quick links, all stuff that we're going to go ahead, we will show you, that it was a real easy way to get right to, well, from the Start screen, if you will, or from what they would enter, what would reintroduce something known as desktop mode, because so many people hate's too strong of a word, they just didn't really like or weren't used to the tablet mode, Start screen tiled interface. That they reintroduced desktop mode, and I'll show you what coming up here. But the administrative quick links were a way to, right there from the desktop, to get to some common places that you didn't have to drop down to a command prompt. You didn't have to go into the traditional control panel, and you could really get to a lot of that stuff right from the main desktop screen, which I will tell you has been included in Windows 10. It's the same thing in Windows 10. They kept it around, so a very cool thing. For a while, this isn't the case now, for a while they offered a free upgrade. That's gone by the wayside because they knew a lot of people, there was a good majority of the people that couldn't wait for the next operating system to come out. So hats off to Microsoft. One of the things they said, and again, they don't do it, I mean, you late to the game by now, you should probably have updated a long time ago if you really wanted to. But they said, you know, people that have Windows 8, Windows 8.1, if you want to go to Windows 10, we'll give it to you for free. We'll just give it to you for free. Move to the new operating system, doesn't cost you a dime.
Very nice.
That was a really good thing for a lot of people. It's not something that you can do now. I just kind of throw that in there so you know the history, all right? let's go ahead and we'll talk about Windows 7, and then we'll finish this this part up here with kind of showing you around the interface, so you guys don't feel like you're window shopping with blinders on here. All right, Windows 7. Windows 7 was one of the most widely adopted Windows operating systems past XP. So if you're looking at your timeline of Windows operating system, Windows 2000, right after Windows 2000, Mistake Edition, I mean Millennium Edition, that came in there somewhere, but we're talking about ones that people actually implemented. Then we got Windows XP. Then from XP was the most commonly adopted Windows operating system of all time. Modern and it's still, believe it or not, it's unsupported. We'll talk about what end of life cycle means coming up, because they do push that out and want you to know that. But and then from Windows, what was it? XP I left off on. That Windows Vista came out, and that was a massive changing of everything, including the security architecture. Then Windows 7, Windows 8/8.1, and then Windows 10 for your timeline. So after Windows XP, Windows 7 was the most widely adopted Windows operating system. I think at one time they were up to 750 million. We were just under 750 million copies. Goodness. So just mind-boggling scalability, I guess, when you talk about adoption is what I'm looking for. We had the classic start menu interface, the classic desktop that you're probably thinking of, and if you're not, you don't know what I mean, we'll show you. But it also introduced a new interface, and I got to be careful. It didn't introduce it, and the reason I didn't put introduce it is because technically Windows Vista introduced the arrow interface. Windows 7 made it better, made it good. It absolutely did. It made it great because when Windows Vista came out, we had these nice translucencies on our desktop. You could see through portions of your Windows screens that were open, but it required a lot of hardware resources. When Windows 7 came out, they found a way to optimize it to where you could still use the arrow interface, but you didn't have a lot of the hardware demands that Vista needed. So again, I put arrow interface because it was the last one that supported the arrow interface, and that might be exam worthy when it comes to knowing just some of the attributes of the interface. Now, let's go ahead, and I'm going to, apparently, I'm going to go ahead and start up my Windows 10 machine that's fallen asleep on me. I'm going to get logged in to our Windows 8 machine, and I'm also going to start up our Windows 7 machine. So we're going to wake all these machines up. Apparently, they know that I've rambled on a little bit here, so we need to get them going again. Yeah, so let's go ahead, and we'll see this one come online here. And I will adjust the resolution here as we need to. Make this a little bit easier to see. So on the desktop, one of the things that you can do is you can modify your screen resolution by just right-clicking on the desktop, choosing screen resolution. And let me go ahead and do this here real quick. And let's see, 1366 by 768. Make it a little bit easier for you guys and gals out there to see. And we'll keep these changes. All right, so this is the classic desktop, right? Very
classic, you bet.
You have what's known as the taskbar down here at the bottom, and the taskbar can, by the way, let me make mention of something. If this is the first time you've been in a desktop operating system, you can right-click, all right? And again, take your mouse options, right? Left-click, right-click. You can right-click on just about any portion of the operating system, like a file or folder over here. I can also, there we go. I was hoping it would work there. I can right-click and I can get a series of options. If I'm on the taskbar, this little strip down here at the bottom, I can also right-click. These quick launch icons that are in the taskbar that allow you that one-click access, I could right-click on them as well. It's kind of behind my head here. If we go to full screen just a second, we got a notification. Thank you very much out there, Miss Denisha. And notice that we have our notification area. That is down here in our taskbar, and it's actually right-clickable too. So I just want to kind of mention that. And while we're here, let me go ahead, rather than having to switch the camera all over the place, in our taskbar to the right-hand side, lower right-hand side of your desktop, you have what's known as the notification area. And in past operating systems, if you've been in Windows for a while, you might have heard this called SysTray, System Information. Today, it's really just called the notification area. And we have some common things that we can do. For instance, seeing, issues in the Action Center. This little flag is known as the Action Center, and it'll take me to into the Action Center in the control panel, which we'll look at in our Windows Tools, the control panel coming up in another episode, and it'll let me see some common things that might be wrong in the operating system or things that it needs to bring to my attention. Right, and then the taskbar itself can be configured likewise too. Now, if I right-click on it by default, your taskbar is typically locked because it's real easy with point and click and drag technologies that we have in the interface. Really, to just drag your taskbar off and it goes into limbo and you don't know where it goes.
Oh, no.
That's for the average user. You guys and gals out there are going to be far from the average user by the time you're A+ certified. So just understand that most average end users, I'm not talking down to anybody by any means, but most average computer end users don't modify these settings, so that's why they kind of come in locked down. But if I unlock the taskbar, I can actually move this to the top if I want. I can move it to the side, right? And do you notice, Zach, notice how we're seeing some translucencies? I don't know if I can pull that. No, I can't do that. I wanted to see if I can show. Can you see how you can almost see through this taskbar?
Oh, sure.
To the desktop behind it?
Absolutely.
That's part of the Aero interface, those translucencies that we were talking about. When you would open a window, any window, I'll open the command prompt here. Do you notice this translucency right here between the Windows icon on the desktop here and the top of the toolbar? Actually, this is the menu bar, if you will. Well, that's the Aero interface that we were talking about in Windows 10. Now, before I get this computer all messed up, let me go ahead and bring this taskbar back down here. I would know the properties of your taskbar and stuff. We're not going to get too much into the configuration because we got tools and features that we want to go into. But I just wanted to mention the start menu, right? You have your start menu here, and this is one of the, the ways we start to interact with our operating system and some of the various programs and applications and configuration tools that we have. Well, when we go from here to Windows 8, Windows 8 actually started something a little bit different, and they started out with this mode. This is what's known as the start screen. Now, it's just called start here because in Windows 8, it was known as the start screen. And they use this tile interface here, and you could get to all of your applications. And that's what I mean. When I say tiled interface, notice these are tiles, right? Notice how I can move these tiles around.
Right.
I can right-click on the start screen, just like I can the desktop, right? We got some options here. I can resize this. I can say, it's taking up too much real estate on the start screen. I want to make it a little bit smaller, So it was configurable. But some people didn't like this interface. So when Windows 8.1 came on, they gave you the option to boot to desktop mode.
Okay.
All right. And this is desktop mode, and it looks just like your traditional desktop, right? But if I choose this button, right, notice the little Windows tile down here. You might think, well, that's going to give me my start menu, right? And I push it, and, well, it doesn't. It takes me right back to the start screen. So that's why I wanted to let you know that this is optimized for tile or touchscreen interfaces because we were supposed to be able to touch the tiles, right? Drag and drop them, press and hold and move them around. You also had, and if we can go to full screen here for just a second because it'll come in from the right and then it'll disappear. We also had these charms options, right?
Oh,
these
the charms
were something that were introduced in Windows 8 and 8.1, and then thank goodness they were completely removed in Windows 10. But this was a way that you can get to some quick stuff. If you need to get to your desktop mode, you could choose start. Well, and it's still there on desktop mode, and thank you for staying at full screen, because notice they'll appear right there on the right-hand side of the screen. And then you could go to PC settings, right? And this was supposed to... They were hoping it was going to change the way we traditionally manage Windows by going to PC settings. And then you'd have this, again, notice this tiled interface, right? And you could go in here and change different device settings here through this interface, right? So essentially, that was the charms, if you will, and the charms menu on the right-hand side. Then you also had active areas of the screen. And again, think tablets here. My virtualization technology is kicking in there. But notice that I could get to recently opened items. I want to keep doing that. I'm doing that on purpose. It'll disappear if I just hover. And I could get back to recently opened applications, right? Fast switching. If I wanted to get back to the desktop mode, we've got down here at the bottom lower left-hand corner of the screen, we also have the start as well. Your search functionality built right into the start screen. All I have to do is start typing CMD. I want to open something up. I type CMD. There's my command prompt. I didn't have to look for anything, and I could turn around and I could pin this to the taskbar in the start menu. If I pin it to start screen, it's not really a menu. I could pin it there. If I wanted to pin it to the taskbar, I could also do that. And then I go back to my desktop mode, and you would find down here in my taskbar, I now have an application that is pinned,
There
right?
it is.
So there's your Windows 8.1 interface, right? And then in Windows 10, let's see here. There we go. In Windows 10, and again, login screen, no different, right? Username and password, I happen to be logged in before, so I don't have to type in a username. But notice this is the desktop, right? And if I hover over, and you don't have to go to full screen on this one. Notice, Zach, I'm hovering over here at the top.
Hovering.
No charms are coming out, right? The charms were discontinued. But if I push the Windows tile here, notice what's happened. Notice it looks just the same as it did in Windows 8.1. But the difference is when I push that, that actually gives me a start screen again, right? The traditional start menu. And that's why I wanted you to say it reintroduces the start menu, but it maintains, this is where that hybridized tile interface I wanted to tell you about, right? You don't see the start screen, right? Start screen's not here. But we have retained some of the tile interface, right? Now the tiles can be launched right from your start menu. There is no start screen. Now, I will tell you, one of the great things that I do also like about this, let me see if I can find one that's not going to go crazy on here and take a whole bunch of time load up. Okay, notice this, Zach. Notice how this isn't full screen. No, it's not full screen, right? I can still see my desktop here. This is one of the things that some people did not like about the tile interface here. When I open one of these tile applications, right, outside of desktop mode, let me see. I'm trying to figure out one. I don't have any photos. Oh, okay. Come on now. Give me a chance. All right. I'm logged in as the wrong account for this to work right. But notice how it's full screened. You didn't have the ability to resize and treat them like traditional windows that would be open on your desktop where you'd have multiple windows open. They'd go full screen, right? And a lot of people didn't like that. So in Windows 10, notice that. I'm going to go ahead and just say no to this. We'll launch up a couple of these. Let's say the calendar. That one shouldn't be bad. All right. Wants me to add an account. I'm not really worried about that there. But notice now I have two of these tiled interface or tiled applications that are open, right? They're still tiled, but they still act kind of like the earlier Windows applications that we're used to, right? So that's why I call it a hybridized type tile interface. It's not the total interface that we've seen in Windows 8.1, but yet it's something new. So it's a mix and match, and I really do like the interface. All right, so I know I've blown through a lot of time here, but I wanted to come back and kind of show you the interfaces that we've been talking about. Notice know the commonalities. I would know, ladies and gentlemen, outside of any reading material that you have, even outside of the videos here, get in here, right-click. One of the teachers that I used to teach me when I first started, they used to say hover to discover. If you'd hover over something, you don't know what it does. Well, look at the recycling bin here. I'm just going to hover over it, and Windows will tell me what it's going to do, what it's there for, right? So hover to discover, right-click, right? Right-click, and then select for effect. Get in and use the operating systems, right? And hopefully that this has helped you kind of show you some of the differences. There's a lot more than when it comes to your operating system and some of the differences, but it does require you getting in there and getting the hands-on knowledge. Now, what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to talk about addition examples coming up and some of the corporate features, as well as distinguishing some of the limitations between our operating systems that we just have to know for the exam, but we're not going to do it in this episode.
No, we're not, but well done as usual. Common Operating Systems Part 2 and Part 3, of course, will be coming your way. Make sure you watch everything in CompTIA A+. Wes is doing a wonderful job putting together all this information for you. Don't forget, there's additional information available. Like Wes always says, research, do your homework, take your notes, and there's also, of course, complimentary information available in our course library. Thousands of hours of additional videos and information designed to do one thing, help you go even further. So make sure you check that out. And tell everybody you know about ITProTV. ITProTV is binge-worthy. Thanks for watching. I'm Zach Memis.
And I'm Wes Bryan.
We will see you again very soon.
Thank you for watching ITProTV.